A heartbroken mom has revealed her tragic daughter's final words to her as the vibrant and healthy young woman died after doctors missed a fatal and Forry's daughter Natasha, 29, said "Don't cry mom" before she died 10 days after first going to hospital with an enlarged cyst on her leg, for which medics simply sent her home with painkillers. The amazing bartender from Vancouver, Canada, reassured her mom in an emotional phone final call from hospital, but the next day she was dead and said, "I am still in complete shock. I miss her horribly. My future as a grandmother is gone. Seeing her get married is gone, along with every other life event. My poor girl, I am just devastated. She was so fun and vibrant, with so much energy for life. How does this happen to a healthy 29-year-old? Natasha's mom spoke to The Sun online as she launched a campaign calling for reform of outdated laws in British Columbia that bar families who have lost loved ones in similarly tragic circumstances to sue. She was a gorgeous girl inside and out. Natasha was so sensitive and supportive of family and friends. The amount of people who have been affected by her loss is shockingly. She lived such a full life, and loved adventure. I cannot put into words how amazing this girl was, and I am still trying to come to terms with the former film casting executive first went to hospital on October 2nd with an enlarged cyst on her leg that needed. Natasha was given painkillers and sent home feeling better. But a week after her first hospital visit, the pain had spread to her abdomen and medics at a local walk-in center referred her to the emergency room at Lionsgate Hospital, in Vancouver, with suspected appendicitis on October. After tests and x-rays, Natasha was told she had swollen lymph nodes in her stomach and sent home with painkillers. And the next day, the terrified Natasha was in agony again and could barely. The young woman, who had recently launched her own natural dry shampoo for dogs, returned to the hospital, only to be sent away with more pain. That was the fatal error, revealed her mom. Just days after her first hospital visit, she was left unable to breathe, had to be taken to hospital by ambulance, and later died, with her mom saying only now is she coming out of shock. Autopsy reports showed she died as a result of pneumonia caused by a staphylococcus infection, which is feared to have been caused by the cyst on her leg, with Anne filing a complaint about the atrocity. As terrified Anne was met by doctors at 7:20 a.m. on the morning of October 12, Thanksgiving, she immediately knew her worst fears had been realized. Her beautiful, sensitive daughter was dead. The nurses were all staring at me in shock, which made it even harder. It was surreal as I went into the room to see Natasha. She was just gone. I am glad I saw her because I knew her soul. It was so traumatic. Her nails were purple and her body was swollen. I'm only just coming out of shock. I have no other children, so I feel the pain has been doubled. Tragically, the animal lover and keen artist had been able to join her mom's small birthday dinner on October 5th where she was her usual fun-loving self, added in the small group of 5, including Anne's partner and 2 friends, did not suspect for a second that just days later Natasha would be. Her devastated mom said, "She looked so good. I just never imagined this would be the last time I would celebrate a birthday with her. I had her when I was young, so we were friends as well as mother and daughter." On the morning of Sunday, October 11th, Natasha called me up. It was just horrific. It took 12 minutes for the ambulance to come for her, but it felt like. Shortly after, Natasha called from the hospital, and when I started to cry, she replied to me, "Don't cry mom." Those would be my daughter's last words to me. Natasha was rushed into an emergency treatment room, and when Anne arrived at the hospital she could see her daughter. Natasha looked my way and I made a heart-shaped "I love you" sign with my hands, before I got into protective gear so I could go in to see her, explain her. She was really struggling to breathe, but I wasn't freaking out at that point. I don't know if it was just I never imagined that was the last time I would see my daughter alive. I had no idea of the grave danger she was. As things went downhill, Natasha was rushed to intensive care, where she was put on a ventilator with suspected COVID-19, but later tested negative, and given kidney dialysis. And told The Sun online, "I didn't understand how she could have been sent home. It is a disgrace. But I had every confidence in the hospital, and the nurses were telling me they had seen miracles happen. It was so surreal. They kept telling me your daughter is really sick, but they couldn't tell me what was wrong. They told me to go home as we were in for a marathon." But the next Anne heard from doctors was a phone call first thing on the morning of Thanksgiving telling her to get to. Natasha had been taken in for surgery after medics had discovered her leg was turned. "It was every parent's nightmare," revealed Anne. "It was a horrible drive. I could only think of 3 symptoms. She has got a flesh-eating disease and they have had to amputate. She has had a bad reaction to the surgery and is brain dead, and we have to make a decision about her life. Or she has wrongful death law reform. What is it?" Natasha's mom Anne Forry is among bereaved families who have launched a hard-hitting campaign demanding change in compensation laws for horrific fatal. The families have teamed up with the BC Wrongful Death Law Reform Society to urge the government of social media video, with help from director Joe LaFleur, campaigning for Ms. Forry has joined forces with families including the mums of 23-year-old Chelsea James, who was crushed after falling through a malfunctioning door on a party bus, and 26-year-old Amir Sedki, who was killed in a plane crash in Chelsea's mum Shelley said, "It was completely preventable. I tried to sue but I couldn't. Not only do you have to suffer the wrongful death and loss of your child, which is huge, but you have to suffer that there's no accountability." And the tragic Amir's mum Marzieh Beghi is keen for change after the nightmare of her. The 26-year-old was on a mission to log wildfires in British Columbia with his boss when the small Cessna plane came down after engine failure, killing the two of them, and his death was every mother's worst nightmare, said his mum of the talented musician and keen environment. "We feel the loss of Amir every day. Only after his death were we even further shocked to learn that my son had no value under British Columbia's wrongful." In BC, the deceased must have an income independence in order for their family to have access to justice and adequate compensation. Campaigners say the laws also disproportionately impact disabled people, the elderly and children when they are killed through the recklessness and harm of others. The Ministry of the Attorney General told The Sun, "We understand the injustice of the issue and the importance of addressing. Our goal is to look at this issue within this government's mandate. We completely understand the grief and the anger and the need for a recognition of what happened to Natasha and to people who find themselves in a similar situation. That's why we believe in the need for reform in this area, and the ministry will address it in this term of government." The Attorney General has recently had a call with Forry to discuss the matter. Find out more about the campaign at intheirname.ca. Vancouver Coastal Health issued a statement in response to Natasha Forry's death. "This is a tragic situation, and we share our deepest condolences with the family and loved ones." The health authority. "We conducted a review to examine the circumstances and our processes in the care of this patient, and will use these findings to improve." But Natasha's mom believes she has been denied the right to a full investigation and justice for her daughter's death because of local. "This is still very overwhelming for me," Anne added. "It has now been 4 months since the sudden, tragic death. It is truly horrible, because I have to live the grief over and over and fight for. I only found out after she died that unless Natasha had a mortgage and children, there are no damages or recourse to justice in British Columbia. I am trying to take my grief and create awareness, and I think the only way I can make a difference is to educate the public about this affects everybody because you don't know who is going to be next to join this unfortunate group of people suffering this pain."